Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar about multicultural companies and the benefits and challenges with that situation. I hope everyone is online now and we will start. My name is Håkan Nilsson. I work as a business developer at DEC Technologies Sweden. A little bit about DEC Technologies. We are an Australian engineering and consultancy company with over 400 employees worldwide. We have 5 different offices, and we are a truly diverse and multicultural company with employees, clients, and projects all over the world. We are gonna go on with this webinar for roughly 30 minutes, and I will encourage every one of you to use the chat function that we have, that you can find in the right-hand corner, to write down questions during the seminar as they come, and we will try to collect them and answer them if there is time in the end at our answering question part of the webinar. We're going to record it and we are going to send it to all of the attendees, and you will also find it on YouTube afterwards. And we encourage you to connect to DEC Technologies Sweden on social media like Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. The speakers of today is my skilled colleagues Mahyar and Sazzad. Mahyar is a developer at DEC. He works as he has a lot of experience. He's been working as a Scrum Master and is now a product owner at DEC. Sazzad has a long experience and has worked as developer and is now Scrum Master at DEC. So guys, over to you. Let's begin the webinar.
Thank you, Håkan. So welcome guys, my name is Mahyar. So let's start by saying why we have this webinar. IT companies are becoming more and more international. According to some statistics released by IDG, in coming 4 years, which means the year 2022, there will be a shortage of 70,000 IT specialists in Sweden. So I repeat, 70,000 IT specialists, which means a lot of IT specialists. That means that the IT companies are going to be even more diverse and international. So there is definitely a need to understand these cultural differences in our workplace. DEC is one of these diverse international companies. We have around 70 people in our Swedish office, and these 70 people are coming from 19 different nationalities. So that means we are really diverse company. And that's why we are here today, to share some insights and our experiences with you. So let's talk what is that we are going to present today and what will not be discussed in this webinar. There are a lot of researchers have done in this area, lots of books written, so many talks were addressed. So of course, in our limited time and this kind of friendly webinar that we have today, we cannot go through all of those researches and studies. But what we will talk about today is that first we will highlight some of many benefits of working in a multicultural company, and later we will focus on the challenges and the main differences that you will find in a multicultural, multi-international company, and what the things that you need to be aware of. So Sazzad, please.
Yes, this is Sazzad. Yes, thanks, Mahyar. Now we can go through some of the benefits of working in a multicultural company. Of course, there are some challenges, but we first take some beneficial side of a multicultural company. So as you will probably all agree that in a multicultural company, it's there are more creativity and there are more innovation. According to a business review article from Harvard Business Review, it's in an article called "The Myriad Differences of Diversity in the Workplace." It said that when there is an inclusion of people from different cultural background, we can directly see and experience different innovation and way to solve a problem. That was quoted by a Harvard Business School professor called Roy Sua. So we have different other like research and like experiment, and always it has found that in a multicultural work environment, it creates more, it brings more creativity and innovation. Another good side of working in a multicultural work environment is like you can see a problem from different perspective or in different angles. In this way, the minimization of the chance of failing is really really solved. So especially in a software companies or in IT companies, nowadays all the products, most of the products are built and taught in a very global context. If we look at different successful software product in the world today, they are used globally and internationally. And if the product was built for a particular cultural context, then probably it would not work in a global way. And we also see in those successful companies, they really highlight and emphasize on recruiting people from different cultural backgrounds. So we actually have different evidences and different experience also on this area. Yes, Mahyar.
Yes, one other benefit that is so often discussed when we talk about working in a multicultural companies is knowledge sharing. Studies have shown that in more diverse environments, you see more knowledge sharing between colleagues and teammates. And one of the reasons to explain this phenomena is that people coming from the same nationality or same background have the assumption that the way they understand the problem or they try to tackle an issue is common between with their same people. So they think everything is like crystal clear. So the way I think is maybe is very similar to how my colleague from the same nationality thinks. But on the opposite, we human, I mean, we assume that people from different background have different knowledge or understanding about the same problem and same area. So this make us to share more and more when we are working in a diverse company. Another benefit is personal growth, which is also connected to knowledge sharing. Of course, as a result of working in a multicultural company where people have tendency to share more and have different perspective, this means that every individual has a higher chance of learning more. I mean, imagine you're working in a company like, for example, DEC, 70 people from 19 different nationalities. Just imagine you are working, you have the chance of and the opportunity to work in 19 different countries. Just how valuable that experience is. Of course, I mean, it's not as effective as you actually go there and live and like in real life where you can really feel the culture closely. But I think it's a priceless experience that you have all these people sitting close by you in the company, which from them you can learn a lot, and so it really helps your personal growth and professional growth. So let's now focus, if you agree with me, Sazzad, on the cultural differences and the challenges.
Yes, of course, I agree with you, Mahyar. And now we can focus on some cultural differences, and our idea to focus on these cultural differences, not to say that this cultural way of thinking is right or wrong, or this one is better, this one is worse, and things like that. But basically we want to say that in different cultural contexts, things can be thought and seen in a different ways, and we have to when we work in a multicultural work environment, we have to consider these kind of things. So when we analyze different way of or different factors of multicultural work environment, we actually came across a very famous book by Erin Meyers. It's called The Cultural Map. In this book, she has described 8 dimensions or 8 factors of defining the work culture, how different people can communicate and work together and so on. So Erin Meyer is a professor at INSEAD. Is one of the leading international business school. So when we are going to focus on the cultural differences, we go through all these 8 factors one by one. So one of them is like communication or communicating. So basically, in a bigger picture, communication or communicating can be distinguished in 2 different ways. One can be very explicit, and one can be implicit. So in an explicit way, people like to have a communication with a verbose manner, with lots of explanation, and whereas in the implicit manner, people have like high level meaning and with a deep meaning, but they don't want to be really verbose and you use lots of explanation. So in a explicit communication way, we also call it low context communication, and in this way a good communication is very precise, simple, and clear. The messages are expressed and understood at face. So if there is a repetition needed to explain an idea, then it's very much recommended. It's not like it's not considered negatively that why you have to explain it again and so on. So you can ask it more and more and so on. On the other hand, on the higher context or the implicit way of communication, it's represent the other extreme. It's called high context, where good communication is defined as very sophisticated and layered. Messages are often implied but not plainly expressed. So people have to understand with their deep understanding and so on. Yep. And then another dimension of like cultural differences is like how the trust is built on. So it can be either task based, or it can be a personal relationship. So in a task based relationship, people actually build a business relationship or work relationship, how good one person is to perform his task. If a person is very good in task, then people can rely on each other. They go for business relationship and they want to work with them. On the other hand, in a personal relationship based work culture, people tend to know each other by spending time outside of work. It can be meeting at after work, or it can be at a coffee shop, or it can be something else. When they like to know each other through that kind of interaction. Or it can also happen that I know one person, and then there is a mutual friendship, and then I know that my friend is a nice person, so he's a friend to him. So it's I also have an impression. I will have also an impression that he will also be a good person, so I can rely on him. So this also like treating trust in different manner. Yeah. Yes, Mahyar.
Yes, thank you. So one other dimension is feedback, and I mean, this is a huge area, but what we will focus on today is direct and indirect constructive feedback. So feedback is one of the most distinctive differences. It is usually one of the first major changes that you will face when you change your working place from a country to another. In some cultures, it's not very polite to directly give negative or, let's say, constructive feedback. Rather, they will wrap it up in a more moderate way. Like, for example, some people say, for every negative point that you want to highlight, you need to first mention 3 positive things about it. But on the opposite, in some cultures, it's the other way around. if you mention 4 points and the first 3 are very positive, and then the last one is a little bit constructive, then your feedback receiver, if he's someone that is coming from a culture that is used to more kind of a direct feedback, then he might think that they think I'm doing great. I mean, this is the minor issue they also mentioned, but overall, this is a very positive feedback. So, so just imagine how much misunderstanding can happen because of just these cultural differences. Are you guys still with us? Hopefully. I'm sorry you cannot really interact, only in chat maybe, but this is one drawback of having webinars, you know. Anyways, so the other aspect is this disagreement, if it is confrontational or avoid the confrontation. Some cultures embarrass, I mean, it's also related to what we talked about in feedback as well. I mean, this disagreement is also giving feedback in a way. So some cultures embrace confrontation while others avoid it. I mean, in some cultures, open confrontation is appropriate and will not negatively impact any relationship at work with colleagues. But on the other hand, the open confrontation is not really appropriate, and it will break group harmony and have some negative impact in the relationship. You agree with me, Sazzad?
Of course, Mahyar. Yes, I can present about another dimension about cultural differences, which is time. And time is a very important dimension when we are working together in a multicultural work environment. And probably you have noticed that different culture treat time in a different manner. As it can be divided into 2 different ways. One can be a linear time management, another can be a flexible time management. So in a linear time management, project steps are approached in a very sequential fashion, where completing one task before beginning the next. So it means that one thing at a time. We often have heard that, like not more than one thing at your plate. So it's kind of that a similar strategy where you don't take more than one task at a time, and also no interruption during one task execution. And the focus is mainly on the meeting the deadline and sticking to the schedule. Also, it has a lot of emphasis on promptness and good organization over flexibility. On the other hand, flexible time management means like project steps are approached in a very fluid manner. So changing task also is acceptable. When there is an opportunity, you can change task, you can take many tasks at the same time, and interruption is also kind of accepted. The focus is mostly on adaptability, and flexibility is valued over organization. Another dimension of work culture difference is persuading, which is like how one want to hear about specific cases and example, and yeah, how they want to present ideas and so on. So in a specific case and examples, people tend to give first theoretical background and lots of fact and figures before they present an idea or their opinion. So it's like that the concept comes first, and the preference is to begin a message or report by building up a very theoretical argument before they can conclude anything. The conceptual principle underlying each situation are valid. On the other hand, there are like holistic details explanation where people like to emphasize more on practicality. So they want to start with the application first, and then later they later want to prove or like validate the idea. So the application first, and then the preference is to begin message or report with an executive summary or bullet points, and then the discussion are approached in a practical and concrete manner. So in this approach, theoretical or philosophical discussion are avoided in a business environment. Another dimension of multicultural work environment is decision taking, and there are mainly two ways of taking a decision. For example, consensus based on consensus, or it can be also top-down approach. In a consensus approach, where it's obvious that there will be a consensus running on the stakeholders, and they can give their opinion, and based on their sort of voting, they can take a decision. It can be different organization level and so on. Whereas on the top-down approach, basically the decision will propagate it from the executive or the managers of the company, and then it will be propagated down to the lower hierarchy of the company. On the other hand, there is also another way of like decision taking, which is called consent, and this is in this approach basically it is basically like you don't have to take opinions, or like you like in a room where people can express their idea, and if nobody opposes that idea, then this idea can be considered and can be tried out, so to say. So that is also another approach of taking a decision. I can give an example from our own company, DEC, where we have an operation board meeting, and in this kind of forum, what we do that in our day-to-day work life, we are allowed to take our decision. And when we take a decision, we basically take a consensus. So we consider how many people have upvoted, how many people have downvoted, and based on that we take a decision. It can be any like from a big decision to very small decision. Another important dimension of multicultural environment is leading, or how the leadership works. And basically there are two different ways. One is egalitarian and another is hierarchical. So in an egalitarian work culture, basically is another word, it's called flat organization, where the distance between a boss and a subordinate is very low. So anytime a subordinate can reach the boss and can discuss about their issues and different need and so on, and organizational structure is very flat. On the other hand, in the hierarchical structure, the ideal distance between a boss and a subordinate is very high. The best boss is a very strong director who leads from the front, and here the status of the boss is very important. Organizational structure are multi-layered and fixed. So if I want to talk with my boss, then I have to follow some sort of like protocol or some sort of like hierarchy. Here I can also give our DEC examples. We are following very flat organization where we have just one manager managing our day-to-day activities, and if we need anything, or if we have any issue, we have a direct contact with him. So to talk with him, he is always open to discuss about our problems or issues and so on. Yes, Mahyar.
Thank you, Sazzad. So basically that was it. I mean, but I just want to give some conclusion basically about what we discussed today, especially in the second half of the webinar, where we discussed about the challenges. There is one thing that we need to remember, and the idea was behind this webinar, and it is acceptance. And what do I mean by acceptance? It means that we are not here to talk about actually which specific nationality have a tendency how to toward which hierarchical or giving feedback or decision making format, but it's rather to understand and accept these differences and be aware that these differences exist, especially for those who maybe are becoming, for those company owners who are becoming more and more international, or even some companies, startup companies who want to go that direction. So this is basically the idea is to be more aware of these challenges. Yes, so I think we are gonna move toward the end, but before we finish, maybe we can go through some questions if somebody have some questions. Yes, so Paulo has a question. You guys mentioned that in multicultural company there is more creativity, innovation. What is the main reason behind it? Yeah, do you want to take it, Sazzad? I think this is what
sure, Mahyar. That's a good question, Paolo, and thanks for the question. Actually, in a multicultural work environment, we have more creativity and innovation in a sense that in a multicultural work environment, people can see things in a different perspective. And as I mentioned earlier, that now the software products are built in a very global context, and people with different cultural background can give their input about how this software can be viable in different cultural context. So in that way, it helps to have more creativity and it brings more innovation.
Thank you, Sazzad.
Yeah.
So let's see if there are more questions.
Well, if there aren't any more questions, I guess we will try to wrap this webinar up. And we would like to thank all the attendees, and we wish for improvement in the interactional part for the next webinar, which we will hold. Thank you also to our speakers, Mahyar and Sazzad. And we encourage every one of you to connect with DEC Technologies on our social media. If you want to ask specific questions, you can also reach out to the speakers, where you will find the contact info in the slides. As we promised in the beginning, we will send out the recorded webinar to all the attendees, and you will also find it on YouTube later on. I've learned a lot of things about cultures, different cultures, feedback, communication, and time, and what is important to be aware of working in a multicultural company. So that is everything for us. So thank you for this time, and hope to see you next webinar. Bye.